Hello again and welcome back to Homebrewers Alley. Today we're going to be brewing a Witbier from extract. Now Witbier has been around for about 400 years, although it kind of lost popularity back in the 1950s, but in the last, I don't know, for probably 5 or 10 years it's kind of made a comeback with both homebrewers and the big breweries. So now a Witbier, or white beer as it's sometimes marketed, is of course lighter in color. It also is a little bit cloudy in nature. And in addition, it's got some spice notes that include coriander and bitter orange peel. Now on top of that, today I am also adding orange blossom honey. The reason why I'm doing that is to sweeten it just a little bit, but also to get more of that orange aroma and more of the orange flavor. And so hopefully we'll kick it up a notch or two from just using the bitter orange peel. One additional note that I wanted to make before we start the brewing process is that there's a lot of different styles and techniques that you can use when you're brewing your beer at home. Everybody's got their own particular method that works best for them, and in our videos we're just showing you the methods that we've found and learned along the way. However, if you have a technique or a question about one of the things that we're doing, feel free to add a suggestion or a comment on one of our videos on YouTube. You can also come be a fan on Facebook. Just stop by our Facebook page. We're under Homebrewers Alley. Become a fan and you can join in discussions there and check out more of our videos. Or you can send us an email directly to homebrewersalley@gmail.com, and I'll put that up right there at the bottom of your screen. But in the meantime, let's go get some brewing done. Okay, so we got the water temperature in the boiling pot up to about 150 degrees. Like we do when we mash the grains. Today we're not using a whole lot of specialty grains, we're only using the flaked oats, and then everything else will just be the dry malt extract. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the flame now. Here we have in our little grain bag is just it's a 1/4 pound of flaked oats. And we'll just drop that in the pot, and that's going to sit in there for about 30 minutes to do the mash. And the flaked oats is going to give you a creamier mouthfeel with your finished beer. It will also give you a little bit of flavor because what we're doing is we're using everything else as a dry malt extract. We're using 4 pounds of a dry extra light malt as well as 1 pound of wheat malt. Wheat malt's going to give you some wheat flavor in there, and it's also going to help with the head retention on the beer, give you a nice lacing. But to help cut some of the wheat flavor in this, we will be using the oats as well as the coriander and the bitter orange peel. Okay, so our flaked oats have been in here for about a half hour. I'm now going to take the grain bag out and sparge them a little bit to try to get some more of the sugars out of the flaked oats. Okay, and same as before, just going to get some of this hot water to use to sparge with. Just going to dump it over the grain bag. Kind of press down on it some. Extract as much of the sugars out of the flaked oats that I can. It's almost like making oatmeal. Okay, so I'm going to sparge this a few more times and then kick the heat back on so that we can start bringing the temperature up and start adding the malt extracts and bring it then to a boil so that we can start doing the hop charges. Okay, so we're going to start adding our malts here. This is 1 pound of wheat malt. Just going to dump that in. Temperature's up to close to 180 degrees, so that's hot enough to start getting this dissolved. I'm just gonna stir out these clumps. Break them up a bit so that everything gets incorporated into the wort. You want to make sure this gets good and dissolved because you don't want your malts to be collecting on the bottom in clumps and then burning at the bottom of the pot, because that does not make for good beer. Okay, now we're adding our extra light malt. I already put in a 1 pound bag. This is the additional 3 pounds for a total of 4 pounds of extra light malt, 1 pound of the wheat malt, and then the 1/4 pound of the flaked oats that we did in the grain bag. Okay, so we've brought it up to a rolling boil now, and so we're going to do our first hop charge. Witbiers have a little bit less hops, they're not as hop heavy as say an IPA. So we're starting off for our bittering hops with only 3/4 of an ounce of Hallertau hop pellets. So I'm going to go ahead and add those in now. And those will be in there for the full 60-minute boil. We'll add our next hop charge, which is another 3/4 ounce for our flavoring hops. And those we will be using 3/4 of an ounce of Styrian Goldings. Okay, so we're down to the last 15 minutes of the boil. We're going to add our second hop charge for our aroma hops, and we are going to be adding 3/4 of an ounce of the Styrian Goldings. These will be in there for about 10 minutes, and then we will be adding our bitter orange peel and our coriander and our honey. The reason why I'm waiting to the last 5 minutes of the boil to add the honey, coriander, and bitter orange peel is to make sure that we get plenty of the aroma from those spices and the honey, as well as getting the flavor out. If you put them in for the whole boil, or even much earlier in the boil, all that boiling is going to boil off all of your aroma and all of the flavor that you're trying to extract from them. So if you put them in the last 5 minutes, you're going to extract as much as possible. Some people also put them into a secondary fermentation. However, we are not doing that this time. We're just putting it straight into the wort for the last 5 minutes and then adding that wort to primary fermentation. Okay, so we're down to the last 5 minutes of the boil. In this small grain bag here, I've got 1 ounce of bitter orange peel and 3/4 of an ounce of the coriander that I crushed up a little bit. Just enough to break up the seeds to get more of the aroma and flavor out. I'm just going to add this in to the pot here. And then I'm using a 1/2 pound of orange blossom honey. And the reason why I'm using the orange blossom honey is I want to bring out more of that orange flavor. And then the honey is also maybe going to kick up the sweetness a little bit to offset and maybe balance the wheat, the hops. And we'll see how this all turns out. And so like I said, this is just going to be in here for about the last 5 minutes of the boil. And then I'll turn the flame off, add another 3/4 ounce of the Hallertau hops at the flame out, and then we'll start transferring it into the primary fermentation bucket and cooling it down so that we can add our Witbier yeast. So we did the last hop charge, and then we transferred the wort into the primary fermentation bucket. And now we're just chilling it down here. And just like the IPA, we're bringing this down to about 70 degrees. And once we get down to the 70 degrees, we'll be ready to pitch the yeast. But before, we'll take a reading with the hydrometer to see what our starting gravity is at. Okay, so it's cooled down to 70 degrees. Now we're going to take our starting gravity reading with our hydrometer and see what we ended up at. Okay, so we are at 1.050, which is excellent because the predicted was 1.049. So we're only 1 point off for the starting gravity, so we're off to a good start. So we're ready to pitch the yeast. Once again, if you can see that there, we are using a Belgian wit ale yeast, and this again is by White Labs, a little vial. Alright, so that's good. Alright, so that's it. I'm going to actually leave this in primary for about probably at least 3 weeks before I transfer it to a keg. But I will take a final gravity reading in a couple of weeks to see where we're at. So now I'm just going to put the lid on this and the airlock in and put it in fermentation. We're good to go. So we got another brew day on the books. I'm happy with the way our starting gravity has turned out. We're right on target for the recipe. and we're going to leave this in primary for about 2 to 3 weeks at least, and then we'll transfer directly to the keg, where then we'll let it keg condition and add some priming sugar to get the carbonation started before we actually tap and serve it at the bar. So that's it for today's session, though. So I hope maybe you picked up some tips on a Witbier. And in the meantime, remember, relax, don't worry, have a home brew. We'll catch you next time on Homebrewers Alley. Cheers.